The lighting at my desk has always been problematic for facilitating video calls while simultaneously spending 8 to 10 hours a day working at the computer. Getting enough light into the right places for a web camera to be functional has been somewhat elusive. My office is situated in the corner of our master bedroom, next to windows that provide north-facing natural light. Under normal conditions, my camera fixates on the bright light coming in through the window and adjusts to it. Closing the blinds eliminates the bright outdoor light, but now the room is too dark and the camera doesn't have enough light to work with. I can turn on the overhead recessed lighting to compensate, but the glare is overpowering to the point of discomfort after just a few minutes. I tested a bunch of ways to light my face directly for video calls, including video panel lights, softboxes, and even desk lamps, but nothing worked well enough for a full day of video calls without being uncomfortable. I began to notice on calls with people in commercial office spaces there were no lighting issues with their camera feeds. Their environments were, for all intents and purposes, always perfectly lit and frequently included windows in the background, similar to my own. So how did they do it? The short answer? Powerful indirect lighting. Commercial office spaces make use of high-intensity fixtures that reflect off the ceiling, diffusing and then distributing light back into the space. Best of all, there's no glare to cause eye strain or fatigue. To address my lighting challenges, I'm going to attempt to take the same approach used in office spaces by constructing an LED pendant luminary to reflect light off the ceiling and distribute it back into the room, with the intention of illuminating my face and background evenly. The pendant will replace the bulb in the recessed light above my desk, effectively retrofitting the fixture rather than permanently modifying it. This means the recessed light can be quickly restored to its original state without a conventional bulb at any time. If all goes to plan, my camera should have no trouble picking up my face and background, even when the window shades are left open.
My approach to this design is to use off-the-shelf parts that have already been largely approved for how I intend to use them. Since our office is also our master bedroom, it was important I get feedback and approval from my wife on the design. Her choice was a simple, minimalist look, 2 columns, and a reflector that has a kind of a thickness to it. The fixture would screw into the socket of the recessed light fixture and replace the bulb that's in there today. The uplight fixture will protrude from the recessed light fixture and have an appearance of being built in. So, simple enough. I snagged a 14-inch pizza pan for the reflector. This is where the LEDs will be bonded directly to. After finding the center of the reflector, I scribed 8 zones for groups of 24 LEDs. My theory is that rows of LEDs oriented orthogonally from the center of the driver will focus a higher intensity light at the center of the luminary that then tapers off towards the edge. This centered hotspot approach should result in the highest percentage of light reflected off the ceiling, concentrating directly below, where it's needed most to illuminate my face when I'm on camera. For LEDs, I've opted for inexpensive roll of warm white 3000 Kelvin LED strips. These have then been cut into links of 6 LEDs each. In addition to being reflective, the polished aluminum pizza pan provides some heat dissipation for the LEDs. The jury's still out as to how necessary cooling is for this specific LED assembly, but erring on the side of caution by providing more cooling feels like cheap insurance to ensure a long lifespan for this luminary. Since LED strips carry a high current positive and negative bus, bridging power between strips can happen anywhere on the buses where there's a set of copper contacts exposed. I attempted a number of different jump ring strategies, none of which looked very professional. If I had to do it over again, I would have purchased pre-assembled connector kits to connect strips together. If 192 seems like a lot of LEDs, I thought the same thing until I considered how uplights work. Each LED's unfocused output is reflected off a ceiling and into the space. The light reflected off the ceiling isn't as efficient at lighting up surfaces below. As a result, more light output is required to achieve a net luminosity of a conventional single light bulb that would otherwise be focused directly. After several hours of soldering, everything checked out, and every bulb lit up as expected. With the driver complete, we can move on to building the decorative base. Next was the decorative circular wooden base for the luminary. I used a combination of cedar and 1/2-inch Baltic birch plywood. This piece was particularly time-consuming as it involved cutting and gluing up a segmented ring. The segmented ring was then glued to the base. Using a circle cutting jig on the bandsaw, I then attempted to cut the assembly into a perfect circle. Unfortunately, my bandsaw wasn't up for the job. It was at this point that it dawned on me I hadn't considered the weight of this decorative element. It was shaping up to be quite heavy. Some research confirmed my concern. The National Electric Code stipulates that luminaries supported only by a light socket alone cannot be more than 6 pounds. This decorative base was on track to weigh at least that much. So I scrapped the idea of this feature and pivoted to an exposed reflector. With that out of the way, I could move on to the light socket adapter. The socket adapter was fashioned from a large washer sandwiched between a socket extender and a socket receptacle adapter. The washer carries the load of the uplight luminaire up to the recessed light bulb socket. The only required modification was a couple of threaded holes in the washer to receive suspension bolts. In the absence of a welder or any welding skills, I used CA glue to secure 2 nuts for threading the suspension bolts. Next up, cutting out a canopy and a decorative cap for the bottom of the reflector. Next, the columns needed their ends squared off. Sanding was next to clean up rough edges prior to paint. Then came all the drilling of holes. With all the parts complete, it was time for final assembly. A coat of paint should help conceal the fact that the reflector is made from a pizza pan. Okay, moment of truth. At this point, all we need to do is screw in the fixture to the existing recessed light socket, just like we would a light bulb. It's important to get the socket tight but not to tighten the canopy such that it tensioned to the flange of the recessed light. So all I'm doing here is just adjusting the height of these two carriage bolts to ensure that they're level. We can turn it on.
And here are the results. My face and background are now lit evenly, and the light from the window no longer overpowers the camera. I can even leave my blinds open throughout the day and enjoy a much more professional look on my web meetings.
This was a really successful project. My appearance on camera has greatly improved even when the shades are open during the day. The brightness of my face and everything in the room are high enough now that the camera is no longer closing down its iris to compensate for the intense natural light coming in from the window. There's no more glare from the recessed light directly above me, and it feels like I'm working in a well-designed commercial office space. As this is a prototype, there's lots of room for improvement. I'd like a bit more power output for one. Granted, 160 LEDs in a 14-inch diameter reflector is significant, but there's room for more. Along with that, I'd like to experiment with automatic dimming and some variable light temperature control. Another nice upgrade would be a low-intensity panel light added to the bottom of the fixture to illuminate objects that are directly below. Then there's the issue of appearance. While the fixture ended up looking close to what I originally designed, it's too minimalist. I'd like to add back the decorative band around the edge and flush the appearance of the underside, giving it more of a presence in the room. I'm also finding I despise the look of the exposed low voltage wire that runs from the top of the canopy down to the reflector. In the next iteration, that wire will undoubtedly be concealed in the columns. If you decide to build this, do your homework. Be sure you understand what you're getting into before you start, particularly as it pertains to electrical and building codes in your area. Now, while I made an effort to research codes applicable to my home, this design hasn't been tested or certified by an independent authority. It is, after all, still a prototype. Well, thanks for watching. And if you liked what you saw, be sure to subscribe to the channel and add a like to this video. Until next time, stay fascinated with what's possible.